Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Overlooked and Underappreciated Live Albums, right? This is the show we bring you every couple of weeks where we take a look at some really great live albums that never get talked about by most people when they talk about classic live albums. Now, for those of you who are live album aficionados, some of these you might already be familiar with. You may have them. You may think they're great, right? But if you're someone who just, you got Strangers in the Night, you got Made in Japan, you got Live at the Budokan at the Fillmore, you got the big name ones, right? We don't talk about those on this particular show. We all know how great they are. They've all performed well in our live album battle we did a bunch of years ago. And those are the albums we talk about all the time, the definitive live albums for some of these bands. But there's plenty of other great live albums by bands that may not be so famous, or maybe some of the famous bands have lots of live albums and we always talk about one or two, but we don't talk about some of the less known ones because they're less known, right? So that's kind of what we're going for here. I know on various other episodes we've done this, people in the comments have been bringing out, one of my favorite live albums is Allman Brothers Live at the Fillmore East. It's like, yeah, I know, we're not talking about those. It's those really big ones that we're not trying to cover. We're trying to unearth some of the hidden live album gems and some catalogs, like I said, of some well-known or not so well-known bands. And, I tend to, when it comes to live albums, the glory years of live albums are from the mid-late 60s all the way through probably the mid-80s. So we're probably talking about a 20-year span. Sure, there's been great live albums released in more recent times and things like that. And I may pull out some of those as we go through the series here. But I'm more looking for the cool gems from that classic period. And again, this could be prog, fusion, metal, hard rock, classic rock, pop, right? Kind of crossing all sorts of genres here, basically the genres we cover on the channel, right? So I've got 10 of them for you. Well, one's a little bit of a cheat because there's going to be two from one specific band. I've done that before, but I'll get to that in a minute and tell you why I'm doing that. But again, most of these are, some are more obscure, some you might have heard, some you might have not, right? That's the kind of goal here, is to pick some of the really good ones that aren't quite so obvious and not the ones that people talk about all the time. So first off, and this is a really good one. This is a perfect example of one of those great live albums that should have been a double, and it also kind of signaled a changing of the guard of this band. So this came out, what year was this? 1971, I believe. James Gang, live in concert. Basically chronicling the great James Gang concert at Carnegie Hall here in New York City, except it's only 40 minutes long or thereabouts. They played a full show that night, right? Probably an hour and a half, or maybe even a little longer. Where's the rest of it, guys? There's bootlegs out there that you can get. I've seen them. I haven't been able to get my hands on that have this whole concert. That's what this should have been. This is just absolutely terrific. Again, this is the classic lineup of the band. Joe Walsh, of course, guitars, keys, and vocals. Jim Fox on drums and Dale Peters on bass. That's the classic power trio of the James Gang. Joe was off shortly after this to start his solo career, and then a couple years after that, joining up with the Eagles. Dominic Troiano, and of course Tommy Bolin would come in to take up the guitar slot shortly thereafter. But this is a terrific live album that has some great guitar playing from Joe on it. I mean, such a tremendous guitar player in that kind of power trio format. I mean, you got a great version of Stop on here. You got Lost Woman is nearly 18 minutes long, a killer blues jam, lots of soloing. Walk Away is on here, crushing and heavy. I got 10 My Garden is on here, great Hammond organ on that. Take a Look Around is great on here. The whole album is really good. This is great hard rock and James Gang. And again, one of the unsung live albums of the early 70s that nobody really ever mentions. If you're a James Gang fan, obviously you are very pro this album, but this should have been a double album, folks, without a doubt. All right, so we're going to go down south here from a band that most people classify as a southern rock band because they are from the South, although their music is very different because their music always very much R&B, soul, funk, jazz, blues, not your typical blazing slide guitars and raunchy swamp music. That's not the music of Wet Willie at all. And they have 2 killer albums from this time period that you need to check out because they're so much fun. For me, the studio albums are cool too, and I have a few of those. But for me, these 2 live albums is where it's at for Wet Willie. So we're going to go with Left Coast Live. And again, this features the great Jimmy Hall on vocals and harmonica. You know I'm not a big harmonica fan, but I don't mind it in the music of Wet Willie because I think it's integrated fairly nicely. Just great funky jams and things. You got lots of really good songs on here. You got Shame, 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 Grits Ain't Groceries, Jelly Jelly's on here, a big long rave up there. A lot of the really good tracks on there. And then you also have the Drippin' Wet live album, which is also really good. These are both indispensable. And I'm trying to remember that I don't think there's lots of track crossover, if I remember correctly, at all, which is great. So if you have both of these, you get so many of the great Wet Willie classics played live. Big, energetic, raucous versions of them, and you get across two live albums with really no overlap whatsoever. And this one's really good because, of course, you got Red Hot Chicken on here. You get Shout Bama Lama, Making Hambone Blues is on here. She Caught the Katy is on here. That's All Right. Really good stuff. I mean, these are both loads of fun. They kind of remind me of 2 live albums by another band, not from the South, upper Midwest, that I'll probably talk about it again in a couple. I'll bring those up in a couple weeks. But yeah, definitely check out both of these Wet Willie live albums. Great stuff. All right, now we're going to stay down south for a really cool band. One of those bands that, like, I never bothered to dive in deep to their studio catalog and always just had this live album. And I always kind of was like, all right, it's got most of their really good stuff on it. The songs are great live, and I never ventured into much of their studio albums other than here and there. The band is Black Oak, Arkansas. Raunch and Roll is the live album, but the reissue of it many years later, called The Complete Raunch and Roll Live, is the one to get. All right, so of course this is Jim Dandy and Company. Great Southern rock band. Again, these guys were very swampy, very rootsy. There's a dash of kind of old school country in their music, twin and triple guitars, and Jim Dandy doing the vocals and playing the washboard, and just really great stuff. There he is, by the way, right there. Yeah, lots of good stuff on here. I mean, Mutants and the Monsters on here, Full Moon Ride, Uncle Elijah's on here, Getting Kind of Cocky. I mean, all sorts of great raunchy, swampy, energetic Black Oak, Arkansas. This is the version to get, and it's got like all sorts of extra tracks and a lot of previously unreleased stuff here to make this a true double album, which they reissued. When did this come out? I'm trying to remember what year this came out. 2007, something like that. So if all you have is the original, get this one. You get all sorts of extra stuff on there. Well worth it. Well worth it. All right. This live album, I do not believe, it was originally released in 1977, but I do not believe, I'd have to double check, do not believe it ever came out here domestically in the States, but it was released in Japan, and then years later was finally given an issue here in the States, and that happened from time to time throughout the 70s and the 80s. And this is BTO Japan Tour. Terrific, heavy rockin' BTO. All right. This is the, and again, probably all the more relevant to be talking about this today because, of course, we lost another Bachman brother. Timmy Bachman passed away the other day, so now we lost 2 of them in the span of just a couple months from each other. Right, Randy's still around, but this is actually the lineup, the what many people consider the classic lineup with Blair Thornton on co-lead guitar alongside Randy Bachman, Fred Turner, of course, and great heavy rockin' versions of songs like Hold Back the Water, Roll On Down the Highway's on here, Four Wheel Drive is on here, Taking Care of Business, Welcome Home is on here, Don't Get Yourself in Trouble. All of the real heavy rockin' BTO is on here. Crunchy, big power chords, and just great meat and potato Neanderthal rock. I mean, that's kind of BTO. That's what's so great about them, right? If you love big riffs, you get it here in spades. So yeah, if you can get a hold of this on CD, BTO Japan Tour, well worth checking out. All right, let's go across the pond over to the UK. This is one of those instances where I really like this band, but this live album is their greatest album. As much as the studio stuff is really polished and well done, it's this live album that really gives you the essence of the band. David Gallagher, you know who I'm talking about? He and I had a whole conversation about this recently. By the way, Davey and I are going to do like maybe a top 10 albums, ranking the albums, top 10 albums of this band in the not too distant future. It's Barclay James Harvest. The album is live. This is killer. If you love mellotron and searing guitar work and emotional vocals, man, this is immense. Some of the definitive versions of some of these classic Barclay James Harvest songs are on this album. So much mellotron. Oh my God. Just so dramatic and somber and ominous. You get stuff like, Summer Soldiers on here and Medicine Man and the great Galadriel is on here and the great 1974 mining disaster. Crazy Cities on here. Paper Wings. Mockingbird is absolutely immense on here. Get this at all stops. I mean, just do not waste time. It's just such a great album. One of the unsung live albums of the early 70s, 1974, as a matter of fact. And again, definitive versions of many of these BJH classics. Great live album. Can't highly recommend this enough. Let's see. Next. So 1969, kind of the height of the Fillmore East and the Fillmore West. So there's lots of great recordings out there of bands and artists playing at either San Francisco's Fillmore West or New York City's Fillmore East, of course, owned and run by the great Billy Graham. Well, how about the great Mike Bloomfield, one of the great guitar players, specifically great blues guitar players of all time. Mike Bloomfield live at Bill Graham's Fillmore West. Mr. Bloomfield and all sorts of friends and guests getting together over the span of 2 weekends. And this is kind of like a compilation of all sorts of fun stuff recorded during those 2 weekends. And you get, Taj Mahal is, I'm trying to read to you some of the people who play on this album. Guest starred, so Mike Bloomfield on lead guitar, of course. You got Taj Mahal plays a little bit on one or two tracks on here. Nick Gravenites, I can never know how to say his name. Nick Gravenites is on here as well. And all sorts of other people show up. There's a whole horn section as well. Just really good searing blues music from the late 60s. Got a little psychedelic bent, but for the most part, if you want just great blues jams and amazing Bloomfield guitar soloing. He's just such a tremendous player. Really sad story about his life, right? I mean, it's one of those guys that just so talented, and man, drugs just took him away from us, right? So live at Bill Graham's Fillmore West, Mike Bloomfield. Check that out. Let's go back over to Europe here. Awesome German band that I think is really underrated, and this is a obscure live album that I think is just so cool because I love this era of the band. The band is Birth Control. Call them a krautrock band, call them a heavy rock, hard rock band, proto-metal band, prog band, psych band. Later on, they kind of dabbled in R&B and disco, like late in the decade in the 70s. But early on, they're just a really great Hammond organ, crunchy guitar-driven rockin' band. It's Birth Control Live. This is from, when did this come out? 1970. Trying to remember exactly when this was released. Jeez. I don't have the year. It's early 70s. Kick-ass stuff. Only 4 tracks on here, all real epic, loads of jamming. If you love lots of Hammond organ, guitar solos, and drum solos, you got The Work Is Done is about 17 minutes long. It's one of my favorite Birth Control songs. Really good hard rocking. If you love like early Deep Purple, Uriah Heep, that's kind of what you get here. Back From Hell is on here. That's about 16 minutes long. You get a near 21-minute version of their most well-known song, Gamma Ray. Gamma Ray. That's just great. All sorts of jams on here. In fact, the power metal band, Kai Hansen's band Gamma Ray, he named the band Gamma Ray because he loved this band and the song so much. a short version, 6 minutes long. That's short for here, of She's Got Nothing on You, another great song by them. And then they do like an 11-minute jam to Long Tall Sally, because so many heavy rock bands of this time period in the early mid 70s were doing old 50s rock and roll classics live, right? So yeah, Birth Control live, killer stuff. Love it. All right, here's another cool one. This one's from 1976, I believe. Yep, the great Dave Mason, Certified Live. Of course, Dave Mason from Traffic. Left Traffic to take up a pretty successful solo career for himself. And this basically satisfies as a killer greatest hits live album. Right, so if you ever like the music of Dave Mason, had a lot of radio hits, and you didn't want to go out and get all his studio albums, you can pretty much get this, and you get a lot of the best stuff played live. You got Feeling All Right's on here. He did some Traffic stuff. Pearly Queen's on here. Show Me Some Affection's on here. Another great song. Of course, he did a great version of All on the Watchtower by Bob Dylan, and later redone by Jimi Hendrix. He's got that on here. Take It to the Limit. Give Me a Reason Why. Sad and Deep as You is on here. Absolutely terrific. What else? Give Me Some Lovin' is on here. Look at You, Look at Me. Great stuff. Really good guitar playing. He's a really talented guitarist. I don't think he gets enough credit for being a great guitar player. But yeah, that's a great live album. All right, next up, we're going to stay in the UK for Camel, the great prog band Camel. A live record. Yeah, this is great. So melodic. Tasty Andy Latimer guitar playing. And if you get the reissue of this, you get a bonus disc, which has basically them playing the whole Snow Goose album, all right, which is classic. On the first disc, the regular part of the live album, you got tracks like Uneven Song and Lunar Sea and Rain Dances and Never Let Go and Lady Fantasy and other Camel classics. Just classy stuff. I mean, Camel was one of the classiest, I think, of all the British prog bands. Just so melodic, so tasty, nothing really ever overblown, just great keys, great guitar work from Latimer, very smooth vocals, and just everything just really nice and very pleasing on the ears. Just a great band, Camel. And then last but not least, and this is what I have here is kind of basically, I don't know if this was ever officially released. This is kind of like a glorified boot, but you can get it out there in various incarnations. This is basically Fleetwood Mac playing in Boston, and it's called Fleetwood Mac Boston Blues. This is a legendary set that they played at the Boston Tea Party Club back in, what year was this? 1970, I'm thinking. Yeah, February 1970, live in Boston. If you want some of the greatest guitar playing from this band, from this era, between Peter Green and Danny Kirwan, this is the one to get. Loads of great blues rock jams. I mean, some seriously great stuff. You have Black Magic Woman is on here. Oh Well is on here. Rattlesnake Shake is on here. Of course, you got to mention Jeremy Spencer as well, too, because he's the third guitar player in this band. World in Harmony's on here. The Encore Jam is just absolutely scorching. That's like 13 minutes long. Red Hot Mama's on here. Green Manalishi's on here. That's like 13 minutes long. This is spectacular. This is the live album from the Peter Green era of Fleetwood Mac that you need to get and need to hear. Like I said, boots have been available this forever. I have been hearing about this for so long. I picked this up a couple years ago, and I was like, "Wow, this is really good. This is ferocious live Fleetwood Mac from that time period. Really great stuff." And that is my list right there. So that's my 10 for today. I cheated a little bit. You got 11 actually. But if you haven't heard any of these, I highly recommend you go check them out. If you have heard and own some of these, let us know what you think of them. And, as always, if there's stuff that I've talked about on this episode that you haven't heard, that you do wind up either going out and buying or going out and listen to, come back to the comments section here before you go and do anything else, and let us know what you thought of some of these. So I think these are all pretty damn special, and there's a lot more to come, guys. So I'll be doing this series for quite a while, because there's so many good, like, overlooked, underappreciated live albums that nobody ever talks about, right? So again, we're not going for the big ones, right? We're not going to be talking about Frampton Comes Alive and Humble Pie at the Fillmore and Cheap Trick at Budokan and Iron Maiden Live After Death. You know, we know about all those, right? That's not what we're going for here. We're going to go for the ones that are falling under the radar quite a bit. So I think that's a little bit more fun because, hey, we all need to discover some live albums that are kind of more on the obscure side. So anyway, thanks for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. We also have the links to our Ko-Fi page below for channel donations, as well as our merch page where you can get all sorts of cool Sea Tranquility stuff. So see you again in a couple weeks with more obscure live albums, but tune in tomorrow. Friday morning at the Funhouse with Martin Popoff. Tomorrow evening, we've got the monthly installment of 4 Fusion Friday. Also, tomorrow morning, we've got my pick number 27 for my favorite 31 hard rock and metal albums of the 80s. Saturday, we've got the UK Connection. We're going to be ranking the songs on a classic album, ZZ Top Eliminator. And Sunday, I will be ranking the albums of the Derek Trucks Band. So lots happening here on the channel. Stay tuned for all of it, and we'll see you real soon. I am Pete Pardo. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.